All right. What an exciting time. What an exciting time to be alive right now. Everything going on in the world. We got the BRICS nations meeting. You know, we've got Jerome Powell at Jackson Hole tomorrow. Exciting stuff, friends. Exciting stuff. A lot going on right now. A lot going on. Also, fun stuff in the Discord. Fun stuff in the Discord. Danny, I have an update. The letter was returned to me. So I don't know if maybe I addressed it improperly, but that's why Moses hasn't got it. So I am updating the letter and I will be sending it back out. And hopefully it doesn't get sent back to me. So there's that. At least one problem solved of about 1 million problems. One problem solved, but a very important problem because I would like to be in contact with Moses. And anybody who's being like, Joe, why are you delusional? You think that you're talking to Moses? Different Moses, my friends, different Moses. So there's the update on that, Danny. That's one positive thing. I mean, negative, but positive that I know what happened. So now I'm going to send it back out and hopefully it makes its way actually to him this time. TikTok, go to YouTube or I will scold you here very soon, very soon. If the music, yeah, please let him know. If you talk to him on the phone, I don't know how you guys communicate, but yeah, let him know. I don't know if like the place where he is sent it back or if it was the post office because I addressed it poorly. Again, I did let him know I'm very sorry, but I am on it and it will be sent out again first thing tomorrow through the fabulous US postal system. So hopefully he receives that soon. Mystic, very not happy that you will not be with us tonight. Because usually you scold me and tell me what a horrible person I am and then cancel me. And it's kind of endearing, if we're being honest. So, Kat, I do have Letty. She is at my feet. She is at my feet. So I guess Moses probably won't write, but I'll try to get his mom to relay anything if he's got anything to say. Okay. Is that like Moses is currently just not like writing people back? Like he's not in a talking mood? I've been there. I'm not being sarcastic at all. During some of my time, I chose to not have contact with people, so I totally get it. Oh, okay. Interesting. I gotcha. Okay. Well, at least I just want to do my part. And then if he wants, you know, I offered to like send him some stuff that was nice when people sent it to me. So maybe he'll care, maybe he won't. Either way, my feelings aren't going to be hurt. But at least, you know, at least I offered. So we'll see. I will be skimping on my very important job. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Not happy about it. Not happy about it. Very displeased, Mystic. Very displeased. But I'm sure whatever you have going on is probably more important than this. So I totally understand. I totally understand. We're going to wait a few minutes for any stragglers and then we'll get going. If the music's too loud, let me know so I can alter it before it's annoying and hard to listen to later. Yeah, he just hasn't written anybody but his immediate family. So yeah, I totally understand. I was there for that was a good beginning chunk of my time. I chose to not talk to people. I was, you know, it's an adjustment, man. It's a total adjustment. So it's very difficult. So I absolutely understand. Ghostgate, I'm glad you're here because I would like to show your definition of sin. If you're cool with that, I would like to show it during this whole process because I like your interpretation. It's not a standard Christian interpretation of the concept of sin. I like the way you wrote it. I like the way you expressed it. And I identify with it to a degree. So if you're cool with that, just let me know because I just like to share it. That's all. Let's see. TikTok, go to YouTube, same username. You're not going to be able to see anything and you're going to have an overall poor experience. Plus, it's a Chinese spy app. So let's get off there, TikTok friends. Ghost get okay, cool, right on. Old Germ Graves. Germ Graves. What does your name mean? I've never asked you this because I'm always very sidetracked. But I've been curious for weeks. What does the name mean? I would like to know. Ghostgate has been a godsend. He absolutely has. Speaking of that, I will have some questions for you guys tonight because I need some help on Discord. And the friends that I had helping in the very beginning when we really didn't need help, they're both kind of dealing with a lot of stuff right now. So they can't really help. So I need to see if anybody else would be interested in helping. So we'll get to that here shortly, and then go from there. All right, so here we go. What are we talking about this evening? Welcome to what's going to be kind of an odd episode, if you are so inclined, to the Theist Thesis podcast. It's going to be a weird one today. We're going to be talking about what is sin and how to deal with it from both an interpersonal, corporate, community aspect, as well as what is sin on a more personal level. How do we deal with sin on a personal level? And then how do we deal with sin on a corporate level? And within Christianity, within religion, when we use the term corporate, what we mean is the church. We mean the full group, the community. That's corporate. So we're not talking about Walmart. We're talking about the church, the community, the body. How do we deal with sin on a corporate level? So those are going to be two kind of the main things that we're discussing this evening. And then we're going to briefly touch on some of the stuff that has kind of been going on within our little community here. No details. So again, like I said, in Discord, if you're here for drama, you're going to be very disappointed. So if that's why you're here, you can go ahead and bail right now. 3 questions I have for you to ponder ahead of time. The first one is this: what exactly is sin? And I'm going to show you what Ghostgate put in Discord, because I think it's a fabulous description of kind of the way that he interprets it, the way that he sees it. I really liked it. So we're going to show that. And then I have more of kind of a mainstream cookie cutter explanation for what sin is. But what is sin? So anybody who wants to throw out their definition, their understanding of what sin is, depending on your theology, kind of, but mostly depending on your religion or your worldview, whether you're atheist or you fall within the Christian category or a different organized religion, you're going to have slightly different answers for what sin is. But within a religious context, they'll be roughly the same, right? They'll be very similar. The second question is this: how should sin be addressed, as I said, on an individual or personal level? What does that look like? And then the third question, as I already said, is how should sin be addressed on a corporate level through a church body? Within that, I assume we're going to have a decent amount to talk about. And then we're going to talk about some community updates. And when I say community, I mean Discord updates, things that we're going to start implementing after I spoke with Sarah today, who is the tech wizard for our Discord. She is everything when it comes to the tech side. We are very lucky to have her. So we're going to be going into that. So first thing I want to show you guys is Ghostgate. He gave us this description, and it's going to be hard for me to read. So I'm not dyslexic. I just can't see it. Okay. So be kind to me. He said this: I still believe my definition of sin, or anything that runs contrary to the natural blueprint of creation, is the most accurate. It doesn't necessarily mean evil. It just means the more of it you do, the worse things will become. Give me 2 seconds. The music in my ears is very distracting. Okay. It's like a law of nature. In this model, ordering an IKEA bookshelf and choosing to put it together with duct tape instead of the provided screws would be a sin. Think about that, because it's a good point. I think God's design blueprint is key in identifying what sin actually is. Isolated incidents of duct tape bookshelves don't affect me because I use screws. But when a duct tape bookshelf movement crops up, I start to take notice. I sin all the time, but I don't feel proud of it. I don't broadcast it. I pray about it and incrementally work on it. So in summary, sin is anything contrary to God's blueprint and acts as a virus. And the more the virus spreads beyond a certain threshold to the various facets of life, the more the society crumbles. There is a direct correlation, and history bears this out. That's my 2 cents. So that's Ghostgate's definition, his understanding of what sin is. And I don't disagree with it. I actually I agree with it quite a bit, because if you think about it, that definition actually encompasses the more standard, more cookie cutter definition. That cookie cutter definition, if we pull from, any of the major sources that Christian, your average Christian goes to Google, they're going to type in what is sin? What is the definition of sin? They're going to find something like this. Sin is described in the Bible as transgression of the law of God. There's a reference to 1 John 3:4, which says this: everyone who makes a practice of sinning also practices lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness and rebellion against God. Then they quote Deuteronomy and Joshua as well. We don't really need to read those. Sin had its beginning with Lucifer, probably the most beautiful and powerful of the angels. I don't like that they add that. It's unnecessary. It adds details that are debatable to a degree, but beyond the point. Not content with his position, he desired to be a higher than God, speaking of Lucifer, and that was a downfall. That was his downfall. The beginning of sin, they're referencing Isaiah 14 here, renamed Satan. He brought sin to the human race in the Garden of Eden, where he tempted Adam and Eve with the same enticement, quote, "You shall be like God." Genesis 3 describes Adam and Eve's rebellion against God and against his command. Since that time, sin has been passed down through all generations of mankind, and we, Adam's descendants, have inherited sin from him. Romans 5:12 tells us that through Adam, sin entered the world, and so death was passed on to all men because the wages of sin is death. So there's a lot more, but I don't really care to read it. That's a good short kind of cookie cutter answer. They've got some Bible verses thrown in, and they're relatively used within context, so it's a decently expressed idea of what sin is. But it's good to compare the cookie cutter answer to, in my opinion, a more well thought out, well expressed, and more all encompassing answer, which is what Ghostgate gave us in the Discord. It's a much better answer, in my opinion, again, because by using Ghostgate's answer for what sin is, you're taking all of the other definitions and you're sucking them into the same idea. So it's a more broad scope without trying to really isolate all of these very specific things of what sin is. Well, what does sin look like? What about his definition? His understanding of it is anything that is contrary to the natural blueprint of creation. What is creation? Is the product of God. It is the product of morality and goodness. So anything that it runs contrary to that would be considered sin, which, in my opinion, is a really good answer. It's a really good answer. I read that and I was like, boom, perfectly said. Perfectly said. Because any other answer you find of sin is just going to be a more isolated, more, in my opinion, too specific kind of understanding of what sin is. Whereas Ghostgates really gives you the full broad spectrum synthesis. Yes, it gives you the full broad spectrum of what is sin, and nothing would fall outside of that. It's all encompassing. I really, really liked it. It was super well thought out, well written. I suspect, Dumbcat says, I suspect there are laws and rules of engagement in heaven. If so, when we sin, it could have an effect in the heavenly realm. For example, your guardian angel may be restricted from helping you. So here's a good question in response to that, and I'd be curious to see what you guys say. Can sin exist in heaven? Right, the idea of heaven is, at least the way that the mainstream Christians kind of portray it, is that heaven is a place that is lacking anything other than absolute morality. Right? Heaven is only and completely goodness. So can sin even exist? I like that you pointed that out because it's a good question. Can sin exist? I would say the normal mainstream answer for that is probably going to be no. So I'd be curious to see if anybody thinks that it can exist. Dumbcat obviously at least is thinking about the possibility that it exists beyond our realm, but rather in the heavenly realm. I'd say that's kind of contrary to what Christians, mainstream Christians, would teach you about what sin is or where it is. Most will tell you that it doesn't and can't exist in heaven. And personally, I kind of lean that way. I lean that way. And the reason I lean that way is because I've given you guys this big description of kind of the way I see the world, and evil ties and good ties and things like that. But I have this weird theory that people probably think is kooky and heretical, that the reason God's not as involved anymore is because evil has taken over, and where evil is, goodness can't be. So God can't be where a heavy demonic presence is, because they act as kind of magnets, wrong side. They're antithetical. They push off of each other. So if too much evil takes over and the human race pulls in too much evil willingly, then God can't, pure goodness and morality can't exist where evil exists. They're antithetical. So I would say the same thing for heaven. If heaven is where God is, in a sense, where his energy is, I have a hard time with the idea that sin exists in heaven. I thought about this today. Do babies live in sin? Do babies live in sin? Well, the Christian answer would be yes, right? Not intentional sin, but they live in, original sin, right? Is sin an action, or do people think that babies simply live in the worldly fallen state of sin without thinking about it? I think what the Catholic view, I mean, Katie, you could probably tell me better because you're Catholic. The Catholic view, if I'm not mistaken, is that babies get baptized because of that, right? Whereas like kind of mainstream Protestant-esque Christianity, they don't necessarily believe that babies need to be baptized because they haven't consciously sinned yet. I believe Catholics baptize babies, one, because if they die, they don't believe they're covered if they're not baptized. But I assume, too, from what I remember, is because they're born inherently with sin, so they need to be baptized immediately. Will we bicker amongst ourselves in heaven? That's a good question. I don't know. I would assume, again, no. Because I think that's a human thing, not a spiritual thing. I was referring to our sin and how it might affect things on the other side of the veil. Gotcha. Okay, that's a better... Letty do. David Grohl. Quiet. That's a better question. So can sin in our realm affect heaven in the other realm? Can it affect any of the other realms? What we do here, does that carry over somewhere else? That's a good question. I'd say sin only exists to fill in the space where God isn't allowed into our lives. So I don't think sin could be present in heaven. It's fairly accurate, right? I mean, we've talked about it in the past that like at all times, no matter what, you're either doing good or you're doing evil. It doesn't matter how mundane the thing is. It is either good or it is bad. Even something neutral, you could argue, depending on the scenario, it still would fall in line with either bad or good, just on a very marginally small scale. That's my opinion. I'd say heaven in general is the absence of sin. Yeah, which is a pretty common belief. It's a pretty common belief. Where sin isn't, goodness reigns, right? And that would be a good description of heaven. God is more powerful than demons and can smite them with the snap of his fingers. Sure, but if he can and he doesn't, then is God good? By his own standards, the answer would be no. So then you get into very deep theological questions, which again, we talk about Job a million times. Job is a good example. At face value, it's kind of not great. So then you got to get pretty deep into it theologically to make any sort of sense of it. God is with us on earth, even though the world is evil. I don't think that's what the Catholics say. Some people probably think so. So from what you know, Katie, why do Catholics baptize babies? What's the purpose? Because they're pretty insistent on it. My mother was a hardcore Catholic. She insisted my daughter be baptized for a number of reasons. I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure I'd bicker to you even in heaven. Fair enough. God is with us on earth as the Son and Holy Spirit. We cannot be with the Father until finishing the filtration process, aka sanctification. What is a demon? That's one of my favorite questions. What is a demon, my friends? What is a demon? What is that? Is it a thing? Are they individuals? Can somebody die and become a demon? Are demons just hell dwellers? I feel like most people kind of have an image in their head of what a demon is. And my opinion is that it's nothing like that, but it's totally just an opinion. And it's based on a lot, but no more or less than anybody else. Demon equals disembodied spirit of the Nephilim, children of the fallen angels, and human women. So you believe that's all demons? They're all disembodied spirits of Nephilim? That's an interesting take. I don't think I've ever heard somebody say that specifically, that all demons are disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. Scott, you survived, bro. That was so funny, Scott. We were all still laughing about it in Discord for days. For days. You were such a good sport. That was hilarious. You survived this. Oh, God. Mikkel's not here, but he would die if he saw that. What is a spirit? Similarly good question. Guys, answer those questions. I'm very, very curious. What is a demon and what is a spirit? What is the difference between the two? What is the difference between the two? They're really good questions. They're things I deal with a lot. A lot. Because we have very little direction. If you're somebody who relies on scripture or ancient texts within Christianity solely, my opinion is you're going to have a hard time answering those questions. Mostly, again, like I complain about a lot, because they've taken a lot of it away. A lot of the references to spirit, spiritual, demonic energies, entities, they've been removed from mainstream Christian texts. So mainstream Christian people are going to have a hard time answering these questions. I'm very curious where you guys sit with that. What is a demon? What is a spirit? Wonderful questions. Would love to hear some answers about them. Katie, you are not Catholic? A little bit snippy. I'm feeling a little bit of snippiness. Tensions are high, man. Tensions are high. Everybody relax. We're all friends here. It's hard pressed to call me a Christian, but I do speak for Christianity. I don't need to be a Christian to know as much as I know about Christianity. I don't need to be a scientist to learn a whole lot about science. You just need to know about these things. You don't need to identify with it. Maze, it's so good to see you. You came on an interesting night, Maze. You came on a very interesting night. I know what they are. I'm just asking others' opinion. No, I know you do, Ghost. I know that you have opinions on what a demon and what a spirit is. Believe me. I know you do. I'm curious to see what others have to say as well. What is a demon? What is a spirit? Maze, if you're going to be with us tonight, I would like to hear your opinion too, because it's been a long time since I've heard from you. What is a spirit and what is a demon, Maze? From your perspective, because I know you're pretty deep in this stuff too. You're pretty knowledgeable. You dig hard. What's your opinion on that? What is a demon? What is a spirit? Scott says, my understanding is that a demon is a fallen angel, but I'm not sure. I believe a spirit references to humans and their spirit. Again, not quite sure. They took it out because they are demons. I think people who altered the Bible intentionally, I think there's some demonic essence to that. I would agree with you. I have an answer, but it goes past the 500 character. Ghost, if you would like to ever come on voice, feel welcome. Or yeah, if you throw it in Discord, I'll pull it up and I'll read it. Demons versus spirit. Well, don't we have a spirit soul made in God's image? Just as a little below the angels, demons are not made in God's image and under his authority. Not sure with the free will that we do. That's a decent answer. That's a good answer. Most people are taught that demons are fallen angels. I tend to believe demons are the spirit of the Nephilim. Dumbcat, why do you get there? I don't disagree or agree, but I'm curious kind of where you get that from. Just because, like I said earlier, it's a pretty specific answer. To say that's exactly what demons are, if you mean it like as a whole, like all demons are, derived from, so to speak, the Nephilim. Where do you source that from? Like, why do you land there? Likewise, Ghost Scott nailed what was in my head. Good answers, man. Scott, Ghost, and Maze, they're all good answers. I don't have the answers to these. I feel like these are very much open because as far as like what you'd call reliable text, you don't have enough. Also, I'd gather demons are the complete opposite of God's nature. Yes. No love, no light. God is good. Demons are, well, not. LOL. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I've said this a million times, so I apologize if somebody's heard it 1,000 times, but this is the way that I view this. It's the only way that I can view this, is there's complete separation. I don't view demons as individuals, like this demon is by this name and this angel is by this name necessarily. I think we've addressed them with names. We've identified them with names because that's the human experience. So that's how we conceive things. Humans have a hard time dealing with something they can't put a word to, because that's how human communication and understanding works. I don't think that's how the spiritual realm works, because I don't think we have any reason to believe that's how it works. So the way that I view it, rather, is we are the world. Letty, we are in this realm, this world. We live on a globe or a flat earth, depending on who you are and what you believe. Doesn't really matter for this example. But we live on the earth, whether that be flat or whether that be round, that is where we live. Below us, illustratively, is dark fog, darkness, evil, immorality, the essence of not good. And then above us, in imagery, is light and beauty and goodness and morality. And we connect with both. And we draw on these energies, because there's not a better word for it, not New Age BS. There's just not really a better word for it. But we draw on either goodness, which is morality, or we draw on evil, which is immorality. And we make these connections from our realm to that realm. I don't see demons as individual things or people, though. Just like I don't see angels necessarily as individual things or people. Just like I don't view God as an individual thing or person. It's an essence. It's an energy. It's something we can't conceive. So we try to figure out how to conceive it. And I think it's impossible for us. So we do the best we can. Letty, come here, babe. You need to be quiet. Good girl. That's good girl. Maybe demons are purely a product of darkness. They just fill entities and are drawn to sin, or maybe sin is something they like to play with. Interesting wording. Interesting wording. But I'm not sure. I was told that they were fallen angels. Yeah, that's the cookie cutter answer, right? They're fallen angels. That's what we're taught. What if it's not real names? Like the names are just representations of the evil they specifically do, which is a possibility, right? Even in Enoch, we kind of see that these different entities are tied to different behaviors that they taught humans how to do, like war, for example, like sorcery. They were sort of not necessarily named for the thing, but the name identifies the demon, and the demon had a specific purpose. That was its involvement. That was its evil purpose for the human race. What is an angel? What is an angel? Ghost wants to know now. What is an angel? Ghost, I'm going to pull up your thing. I saw that you posted it in Theology. So Ghost gave us an answer here, at least the way he sees it. All right, here you go. So Ghost threw out in the Theology section on Discord. If you're not in Discord, all of you guys are, but if somebody is watching later, there's a link in the comment section pinned, so you'll be able to get in the Discord there. But Ghost said this: a spirit is a source of energy or influence, usually invisible, designed to act upon or filter through a specific toroidal system. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. Soul. A soul is any toroidal system designed to receive, transmit, and or transform a spirit. Interesting. I'd pick at you a little bit about that. Just out of curiosity, not in disagreement, out of curiosity. Body, any structure designed to protect and host a soul. Yeah, we can go deep on this. Examples of spirits would be language, words both spoken and written, symbols, letters, numbers, pictographs, runes, etc., ideas, ideologies, light, water, blood, and wind. So these are examples of spirits. So says Ghost in Discord in the Theology section if you want to go read it yourself. Examples of souls, per Ghost, would be brains, nervous system, Hearts, guts, trees, mushrooms, radios, hard drives, dams, windmills, atomic nuclei, planet cores, stars, black holes. Toroidal systems are systems with an in and out function. It's a pretty good description, man. Examples of bodies are pretty much self-explanatory. You can have a singular body or a group of individuals that make up a body. The word ecclesia comes to mind. That's well put, man. That's very well put. Anybody who wants to read that themselves, it's in the theology section. Heat and cold aren't separate categories. Cold is just the lack of heat. Yes. Yes. Would we say the same thing about dry and wet? Probably. What about legion? When Jesus cast legion, we are many, into the pig. It's one of our references, right? There's a handful. Like I know I talk about how spirituality has been pulled out of the Bible. Not entirely, right? It exists. There's references to demons, obviously, within the New Testament. It's a decent thing. It's decent enough that you have an entire movement of Christianity, the charismatic movement, that's obsessed with the concept of demons, casting out demons. It's their whole niche, right? It's their whole thing. So spirituality and the idea or concept of demons, it exists. And it's prominent enough, again, that we have millions of Christians who are obsessed with the concept of demons, and specifically within the context more in of them being cast out. So there's enough, and that's one of those references, right? Legion, we are many. Sure, but is it literal? Just like anything else in the Bible, is it literal? If we take this part literal, why do we say it's not literal about the four corners of the earth? How and when beyond context do you intelligently decide what is an illustration, what is meant to be poetic, what is an embellishment, and what is meant to be academically literal, historically literal? That's where the Bible is. It's a tricky text. It's a tricky text because then we end up picking and choosing. Okay, we are many. I'm going to take that literal, that demons are many and they are individuals creating some kind of body, like Ghost Set. A body. It can be either a single body or a group of individuals that make up a body. So are demons a body of single individuals making up a sum? If I take that literal within its context, where do I give? Where can I identify within myself where I'm deciding something else is not literal, when within the context, it gives you just as many context clues as that verse right there, that we are many? These are hermeneutic and exegetical issues that need to be thought about, and that you need to be honest with yourself about, because otherwise you're just cherry picking, and it's not a good look. It's not a good look. Some believe Devil's Tower, a tree stump that was chopped down by Titan Nephilim. I honestly don't know anything about that. I'd be curious to find out though. Dumbcat, are you in Discord? If you are, and you have any sources for that, you should throw that in the theology section. I'd be interested to read about it. I do not know about Devil's Tower, a tree stump that was chopped down by Titan Nephilim, but it sounds interesting. Take my spirit definition and apply a negative lens on it. Bam, demons. Yeah, the absence, right? The absence. It's not a bad example. It's a good example. All right. So onward. What should sin? How should sin? How should sin be addressed individually on a personal level? So this is sin of my own to myself. How am I to address it? How should I address sin within myself? Be interested to hear from y'all. And then I'll blab like I always do. TikTok, go to YouTube. Take my spirit, that the Earth's magnetic field facilitates all of these phenomena. Read Ecclesiastes 12:6. I will get that up for us right now. Maze said, is there a difference between devils and demon? Devil is Greek daimon, meaning knowing or intelligence. Does this mean their intelligence knowledge is superior to human beings? That's a good question. It's a good question. And even then, pick it apart more. Pick it apart more. So in Greek, they still just chose to give something a name, to try to conceptualize it, to try to understand it, to try to conceptualize something that we cannot conceptualize because it is outside of the human experience. So even that title, should we approach the word devils and demons based on the word, or should we approach it based on what its application in our realm is? And what I mean is that if all we do is say, okay, well, the word devil in Greek means this, so now I'm going to approach devil only from the lens or context of the Greek definition of it, I think that's a really bad way to try to approach theology or philosophy, because you're already painting yourself into a massive corner. Take word definitions out. Try to understand what the thing is. What is devil in application? How does it interact with our world without somebody else's interpretation of it? Because the name that was given to it in Greek was given to it by people who are fallible and who have biases. Just advice. Take the words out, take the definitions of other people out. What is the application of devil and demons within our world, within our daily life? That would be my approach, because I don't want whoever decided that's what it's called in Greek to decide how I think about something as content or how it interacts with my world. In a lot of cases, their knowledge is superior, but their wisdom is lacking. It's a good answer. Yeah. I mean, demons are obviously smart, right? Because they're able to engage and interact with our realm with not a lot of hindrance, right? And if you believe all the stories of people with demons, they outsmart people on a pretty regular basis. So the intelligence and knowledge and understanding is obviously there. But as Ghostgate said, wisdom is a totally different story. That's a good point. On demons, Joe, I lean more towards Carl Jung's The Shadow. The shadow is the unconscious part of our character or personality that does not align with the ideal version of what we're aiming for. This being the version of us Jung called the ego ideal. Is that one of the ones you sent me? I think that might be one of the ones I threw on my list because you sent it to me. Haven't read it. Now I'm a little bit more inclined to, though, because I'm curious on a deeper definition there. It's an interesting idea, though. The shadow is the unconscious part of our character or personality that does not align with the ideal version of what we're aiming for. This being the version of us Jung called the ego ideal. It's interesting. But is that all encompassing, Mikkel? Is that what all demons are? Or is that within kind of a personal context? I'd be curious. Ask yourself this: if the DSM-5 a demonic grimoire? It's a good question. It's a good question. It's a very good question. Could that knowledge be synonymous with the Genesis knowledge of good and evil with that stupid tree? That's also a really good point. So if we go back to Genesis and we go to the fall of man, the origin of sin, the people who are to blame, if you're Christian and, mainstream Christian who believes normal Christian things, basically everything bad that you've ever experienced in your entire life is because of Adam and Eve, right? Just kind of point blank. So Mays said, could the knowledge be synonymous with the Genesis knowledge of good and evil with the stupid tree? It's a good point. That's a good something to be thinking about. What direct correlation? Yeah, no. All right, Ecclesiastes 12:6 goes throughout a second ago. I pulled it up and then I never shut up. TikTok, go to YouTube, same username. Ecclesiastes 12:6 from the... Can I get a better version here? Nope. Okay, from the NIV. Remember him before the silver cord was severed and the gold bowl is broken, before the pitcher is shattered at the spring and the wheel broken at the well. When you strip away all the brain matter, what would the natural pathways look like? Yes. That is how I approach things like this. That's, in my opinion, that's the best way to approach things like this, because you're pulling human bias out at least as much as you can. It's not ever possible entirely to be totally objective, but it's the best way, in my understanding, to be able to be as unbiased as possible, to be as objective as possible. When we sin, it may grant demons more power. I completely agree with this. And because it goes back to my theory that everything you're doing, good or bad, you're making connections to either good or bad. And each connection you make, you're essentially inviting that energy into this realm. So every poor decision you make, which would be considered sin, right? You're making connection to evil. You're pulling the energy into our realm, from the spiritual realm into our realm. And the same would go for, obviously, the opposite way. The devil and his devils influence in falsehood, deception, and anything that opposes godly wisdom and truth. Yeah. The devil's temptation and accusations may manifest as doubts, fears, or obstacles that challenge your faith and courage, both in your personal life and in your pursuit of your website's mission. Your website's mission. Your website's mission. Like ours? I agree with all of it, though. Well, it did say the serpent was wise and or crafty back in the beginning. Definitely manipulated Eve, which is, I mean, that's like a fundamental role of demons, right? Is manipulation. If you think about it, even kind of the wacky Hollywood stories of demons, there's a lot of portrayal of manipulation. Demons are very good at manipulating, right? What was that scripture reference again? The scripture reference that goes throughout was Ecclesiastes. What was it? Ecclesiastes 12:6, I believe, was the scripture that was thrown out, Sarah. It's good to see you, Sarah, by the way. Thanks for helping today. What's up? Yeah, the shadows is more on a personal context, each one's ego. Yeah, that makes sense. Ecclesiastes 12:6. I agree with Mikkel. That makes sense. Within that context, it makes sense. I mean, I would definitely agree. Without knowing the full description that Jung gave, it makes sense to me. Serpents have forked tongues, meaning they use double speak. They also slither in the same pattern of a sine wave. Sine waves represent duality, aka the knowledge of good and evil. There is your snake reference from the origin story. That's interestingly put. Hey, Scott, you were redeemed after your sacrifice. Yeah, Mikkel, you missed it. Scott came in and said like something to the effect of he survived the sacrifice. I don't know, but it was very amusing. It was very funny. It's impossible for me to agree what sin exactly is when I don't believe in the Genesis telling of what happened. Does Genesis need to even exist for sin to exist? Genesis gives us a why. It gives us a how. But is it required for the concept of sin to exist? I don't think so. I don't see why it would. I feel like the concept or idea of sin can exist no problem without Genesis. Most of you are aware, I do not take Genesis as a literal historical event at all. But it doesn't interrupt my understanding or my ability to agree with the idea that sin exists. I can experience sin, on a personal level, on a corporate level, and on a societal and world level. Sin exists. I don't see that Genesis really takes that away. You're just kind of losing the how, the Christian idea of how. But then at the same time, you have to understand sin exists in virtually every religion, and every religion doesn't adhere to Genesis. So is Genesis necessary for the concept of sin? It just makes understanding the Christian context of sin a little bit more difficult if you've never tried to conceptualize that. But devils and demons, I don't see evidence to suggest. There's devils plural, daemon and daemonon, daemon eon. are used in the New Testament in singular and plural, demons, but never used with diablos, devil. Only one devil. I guess doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. This is again like to get caught up on the semantics of devil, demons, plural, singular. Does it matter? To some of you, it might. And so if it does, that's not wrong. But then you have to say why. Why does it matter? And if it matters, you're going to have to try to figure out, what does that mean? I don't think it matters. I think that's doing what Christians do best and getting caught up on things that are insignificant. Whether it's singular or plural, whether devil's the right word or demon's the right word, we're talking about evil. Does evil exist? For sure. Does it really matter how it exists? I don't see why. Personally. That doesn't mean I'm right. That means that's what I think. Ecclesiastes 12:6, those symbols aren't arbitrary. I might elaborate later. If you choose to elaborate later, I'm sitting in the theology section on Discord. So if you throw it out there, I will read it. So Scott actually responded to Ghost in Discord here about spirit, soul, body, and examples. Let me just make sure. Yeah, okay, so this is good. So Scott said this, in the beginning, in the Christian understanding, this is for spirit. The spirit is not merely a source of energy or influence, but is often associated with the immaterial aspect of a person that connects with God. The Holy Spirit is a distinct person of the Trinity who empowers, guides, and comforts believers. And then he's got a couple of scriptural references there. Soul, per Scott, the soul, according to the Bible, refers to the essence of a human being, encompassing the mind, will, and emotions. It is not limited to a toroidal system, but represents the eternal aspect of a person that continues beyond physical death. He's got a couple of verses there too. Body. The body is indeed the physical structure that houses the soul and spirit, but it is also considered a temple of the Holy Spirit for believers, with a verse to reference. The resurrection of the body is a key Christian belief, emphasizing the eternal significance of the physical body with another verse to back it. Examples. The examples provided in the statement may have metaphorical or symbolic resonance, but they do not align directly with the biblical definitions. For instance, spirits as languages, symbols, etc. While the Bible does not speak of the power of words, Proverbs 18:20 does speak of the power of words. I apologize. Proverbs 18:20 and uses symbols. These are not equated with the spiritual essence of a person or the Holy Spirit. Souls as brains, trees, etc. The Bible does not describe the soul in terms of physical systems or objects, but as the immaterial, eternal aspect of a person. Bodies as groups, while the Bible does not refer to the church as the body of Christ, does. I don't know why I keep reading doesn't when he says does. While the Bible does refer to the church as the body of Christ, got a verse there. This is a metaphorical expression and not a redefinition of the physical body. Interesting. So you've got a little bit of a contradiction there, a little bit of a different explanation there. So if you're curious to read that, that's in the theology section. Ghostgate threw his 2 cents out there, and then Scott replied to it. They're both very well thought out and very well written. It's interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Every symbol has a literal analog. We can pray and ask that God removes our desire to commit specific sin. I mean, true. You can pray for anything though, right? Does that mean it's going to happen? That's a different question. Can you touch on original sin, personal sin, and unintentional sin? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. I'm going to just move that over to my notes real quick. So yeah, we'll come back to that. Wait, but biblically Satan took a third of the angels with him. So is he equivalent of the boss level video game versus the other ones are less powerful? I'd say kind of the same thing as one of your earlier comments is how literal is it? I don't have the answer. I don't know. But that's a matter of, for the interpreter, which is you, how literal do you take that? Is that expression that Satan took a third of the angels with him, is it meant to illustrate something that you otherwise could not understand? Or is it literally what happened? It's a good question. It's a good question. Don't have the answer to it. Is Legion a part of the third, or do they have other identifiers? I wonder. It seemed to matter when they named Legion rather than just saying cast the demons out into the pig. Food for thought. That's a good point. That's a good point. Legion was named. So were some others, right? So were some others. So how significant is it? That's also a good example of something they left in the Bible, whereas they took a lot of other references to demons out. Letty, quiet. Cat, I need you to come home because Letty is not happy. I need you to come take this dog. Scott, what about sin of omission and commission? I think even if you don't believe in a religious view of sin, there are still rules and regulations you follow or end up being considered a lawbreaker, i.e. sinner. And if caught, face the consequences. Scott is agreeing with me without realizing he's agreeing with me. We can talk in Discord later if you like, Scott. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities there with different expressions of them. Gotta be quiet, sweet girl. We got an unruly pup here. In my opinion, God made creation to function like a fine clock. When we sin, we perform an action that is outside the design. We throw a wrench in the clock gears. Things don't work right. Yeah. Simply put, Maze, how many bad ideas exist in the world? How many ideas run contrary to the narrow path? Specific idea, aka Holy Spirit. Too many to count, my friend. Too many to count. All right, so I think it was Scott who asked original sin, personal sin, unintentional sin. So something that we've talked about. Oh, thank God. Something that we've talked about in the past is what makes what makes a lukewarm Christian. That's something we've talked about a decent amount. And then something else we've talked about is what is everybody sins. So how is anybody right? How is anybody going to be okay? How does anybody have any proper footing against or compared to anybody else? One of the only real identifiers is, are you intentionally sinning? Or are you kind of sinning on accident? Because that does exist. That is something that we do. There are things that I do without thinking about them that would be classified as sin. Whether you hold to a classic definition of sin, like I read second, or you identify with more of an open, better description of sin, which is what Ghostgate put in the off-topic section of the Discord. No matter what, we all do that. We all do that. And I would go so far as to say, literally everybody here, including myself, also intentionally sins. We know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly what the consequence is. We know exactly why it's not okay. And we still choose to do it. Maybe not often, hopefully, if you've, grown and matured in your faith, whatever the faith is, doesn't really matter. But if you've matured in it, hopefully intentional sin becomes a very small ratio, right? Ratio to unintentional sin. But it still exists. The Bible does talk about how those who perpetually sin, I believe it goes so far as to actually say they are of the devil. Perhaps of demons, but I want to say of the devil. Those who consistently, perpetually choose to engage in that which they know is wrong. They know this on an intellectual level. They have the capacity to understand that it's wrong, and they still do it. The Bible actually says those people are of the devil. My question, when we talked about that months ago, was, do you not all do that? To some degree, I do. There are things I continually engage in, or continually say, or think about that are sins. By my framework, by my Christian understanding, my moral framework, which I believe comes from God, I still do it. That's just the honest truth. I've mitigated most of them, but there are still little things here and there that I do. And whether it's once a week or once a month or once a year, that's still perpetual by definition. It's something that I repeat. So how are any of us in good standing? Or are we? Joe, I would suggest move forward and tackle how we should deal with fellow seekers who struggle with sin. It's highly priority for the community. I agree. Yes, we're going to get to that in just 1 second. Don't you worry, my friend. What about the ethical standpoint? Like, the law isn't simply black versus white, theft of bread so family doesn't starve. Are there loopholes in sin? Perhaps look at the heart. Yeah, I think that comes down to the other thing that I say probably so much that it annoys you guys is, what is the condition of your heart? There are people who obviously steal, like you said. They have a child who's starving. I mean, on one hand, I want to say, like, you know, figure out a way to get money legally. Like, that would be the right thing. But at the same time, there are situations and circumstances where somebody might not have the possibility. I think they're very few and far between, but I think they exist. So in those cases, I think God judges them on the condition of their heart. Are they stealing out of gluttony? Are they stealing because they get a thrill from it? Or are they stealing because they really, truly, honestly within themselves feel like they have no other option whatsoever, and it's what they have to do to survive? I think that's judged on a case-by-case basis. That's my understanding. It's my understanding. Sin is cumulative. I agree with this. I absolutely agree with that. Joe, let her be. She keeps whining. She's driving me crazy. I still smoke weed, says Germ, but I'm still on it, though. I still smoke weed, but I'm still on it, though. I don't quite understand what you mean. We can perform a certain sin so often and for so long, we become desensitized to the idea that it is even a sin. Yes, a good example of this from men that I've talked to for many years is something like porn. There are loads of men who continually watch porn. If they stop and actually think about it, like truly think about it, they obviously recognize it's not something they should be doing. However, they continue to do it. It's a good example that always comes to mind when we talk about perpetual sin, because I know a vast amount of people, even within Christianity, who are absolutely addicted to porn. But I smoke only like how people have a beer after work and everything is done around the house. Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that if that works for the individual. There are plenty of people who smoke weed, as you said, like people who drink. It's no problem. You get home from work, you know, all your chores are done, whatever, and you smoke or you drink. I don't see the difference between the two. I think it's weird and annoying. People who drink and hate smokers and people who smoke and hate drinkers, both aren't the best thing you could be doing with your time. Both shouldn't be talking trash to each other because it's no different. You're both doing the same thing. Different substance, same concept. Perpetual sin is, from my understanding, the description of the unforgivable sin. Blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, right? No. Perpetual is just over and over. So a sin that keeps on sinning. The unforgivable sin, blasphemy, that's a totally separate thing. I mean perpetual in a literal sense. It's concurrent. You keep doing this sin over and over. Again, the best example in my head is pornography. You watch porn, you know it's bad. When you're done, you feel guilty. And then still a day later, 2 days later, you watch porn again. You feel bad, you feel guilty. 2 days later, you watch porn again. You feel bad, you feel guilty. That's perpetual sin. You keep perpetuating the cycle of, in my opinion, addiction. It's addiction. It's a sexual addiction. Keep doing it and don't force yourself on regulating it. It's a gradual process with intent. Obviously, no one is sinless other than Jesus, hence why we need Jesus according to Scripture. Psalm says we sin from birth. Romans says we have all sinned and fallen short from the glory of God, but grace. But grace. So does but grace wipe out all of our poor decisions? Does but grace mean that we can do whatever the hell we want as long as we say we believe in Jesus? Does but grace apply just because Jesus died for us? Then why would anybody stop sinning? I get that because that's the mainstream Christian belief. I don't sit with it. I don't like it. It's a cop-out, in my opinion. Totally my opinion. Most of you will disagree, then that's fine. We need to be able to disagree. The but grace thing drives me insane. And that not towards you, Maze, at all. But the but grace thing, we've talked about it. Late 90s, fire and brimstone. Early 2000s, but grace. Grace covers all. You're good, nothing matters. Do whatever the hell you want. Because grace. Because Jesus died for you. So, it's cool. It's cool. Nah, it's not. It's not. Because the Bible talks about not behaving in these types of ways more than it talks about the concept of grace. So that's an example of where you aggregate the information. Is but grace a more prominent concept in the Bible than don't do that crap? No. Don't do that crap is a much more prominent teaching within the Bible than but grace is. We just decided to attach to but grace because it makes us feel better. It removes the guilt. I don't like it. I don't like it. So does God judge grade on a curve? I do. Yeah, I'm of the devil. Yeah, I mean, realistically, I am of the devil. If perpetual sin, if doing the same sin continually makes me of the devil, that is me. There are things that I do. Big things I've definitely mitigated. I'm at the most probably stable, most moral place I've ever been in my life, but there are still things that I repeatedly do. I think sin could be simplified to boil down to being simply an act that isn't loving God or each other. Yeah, because that all encompasses a lot of things, right? So I think that's a great answer. Did Jesus not say the whole of the Pentateuch is followed by loving God, then others? Yes. Yes, Maze, it's about culpability. A 10-year-old and a 30-year-old can commit the same sin, but they have different levels of culpability. I absolutely agree with that. You keep saying but grace. I do not think it means what you think it means. I just watched The Princess Bride again. Okay, all right, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. You guys can keep going with this, but as Mikkel said, I do want to move on to the next piece. So I'm going to throw the next question in the chat. And there it is. How should sin be addressed on a corporate level through a church body? So as we have kind of discussed, our Discord group, this stream right now, I consider this church. This is by definition, it fits ecclesia. By definition, we are a church. We gather together for one cause. That cause is understanding, is truth seeking, is I guess seeking God in general. And that looks different for different members of the group. We've seen that and we talk about that. But in a general sense, we're all seeking the same thing, which is arguably what all religions are doing. They're all seeking the same thing. They're seeking some kind of understanding, some kind of grasp on who or what God is, what our purpose is here, what is right, what is wrong. So understanding morality, that is why we're all here. So for those of you who do not know, we had a little bit of a heated moment in Discord over the past couple of days. I don't want to get into any of the details, but essentially what it boils down to, in my opinion, and my opinion might differ from others, and that's okay. I'm not saying that my opinion is the truth. I'm saying that it is my opinion, and that is why I speak very, very carefully. Very carefully. This is my opinion. My opinion is that, one, when somebody has a hard time expressing where they stand on an issue or a topic in a community setting, especially within a Christian community setting where others should be holding each other accountable, if you have a hard time or if you poorly express your beliefs on something, it becomes tricky. And in that scenario, again, within a community where we should be calling each other out, if you guys see me all of a sudden talking shit to people, excuse my language, but talking badly to people in Discord, I would hope to God somebody would call me out privately first and come to me and say, hey, dude, what's going on? You seem very testy. You seem very aggravated. You're treating people ways that you don't normally treat people. What's up? Is there something we need to talk about? Are you just venting? You having a bad day? Did somebody kick your dog? Like, what's going on? What's going on? First, approach with love, in my opinion, because you never know what the hell somebody's going through. That's just a life skill. Also, you should never assume you know why somebody's behaving out of character. If somebody's behaving within their normal character, don't ask questions. I mean, that's who they are. That's who they are. Don't be confused by that. Accept that. If you don't like that, don't talk to them. That's an adult thing. Be an adult. If you know somebody is a certain way, and then that person starts acting in that way, you are to blame if you are surprised by that. or thrown off by that. You are not going to like everybody. You're not going to agree with everybody. Those are people you probably just shouldn't really talk to. Don't deal with them. However, on the other hand, if somebody's acting a little bit out of character or is expressing an understanding of something that doesn't align with what you believe they normally stand for, that's a moment where, in my opinion, we should approach the person, one, alone. If somebody wants to pull up this in the Bible, find it for me, please, so I don't have to stall and take time. But within scripture, there is direction on how to approach each other in an appropriate manner. And I could be blowing it a little bit, so I hope somebody finds it. But I believe it's individually first, so one-on-one. So if Mikkel starts acting a fool in the Discord, I'm going to send him a private message just between him and me. And I'm going to say, hey, what's going on, man? I feel like you're kind of acting a little bit out of character. You're being a little bit rude. What's going on? What's up? What's the deal? Did Scott come back from the dead? And is he bugging you? What's the deal? If that doesn't work, again, I can't remember exactly, but I believe after one-on-one, you bring several people who should be in some kind of leadership role. So higher ups, if you will. May's got me. She says Matthew 18. I was trying to kill myself right before the stream. I had like 2 minutes and I couldn't remember where it was. Matthew 18. Is this what I want? Let's see. Do you have the specific verses, guys? So I don't have to read this entire thing? If somebody can find the specific verses, that'd be awesome. But approaching one-on-one should be the initial route. So if somebody's acting a fool, come out. There you go, Maze. Thank you. Is our guide for restoration in the church and its principles can be used in conflicts. The scripture reads in verse 15, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him. Okay, 15 through 20. Thank you, guys. You guys are absolutely lovely. All right, 15. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, there it is. Take one or two others along so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So then as a small group, thank you guys, seriously, thank you. So then as a small group, you take a couple of people, preferably, and this is my opinion, I'm not talking about scripture anymore, preferably some people that the person that you're approaching trusts, because that just makes sense. That just makes sense. Try to, people who they respect their opinion, where like if Kat comes to me and says, hey, dude, you're totally weird. I trust Kat. I know she knows who I am. So if she says I'm acting weird, I'm probably acting weird. So you're going to want to approach the person with somebody that the individual who is being approached trusts and respects. But so you're going to grab 2 other people, 2 or 3 witnesses. Verse 17, if they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. Tell it to the group. Tell it to the body. If they refuse to listen, even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. In other words, excommunicate. Nobody likes that word. It's what it is. Okay, other examples of that you have in 1 Corinthians, when Paul talks very blatantly about people who cannot get with the program are to be excommunicated from the church. Period. It's not easy to hear, but that's biblical. So for all the biblical Christians here, that is a guideline that you should not stray from. Does that mean we're going to be perfect all the time? No. I've blown up at people in public settings. Sorry. You should say sorry because it's not the right move. But I've done that. It's happened. People are people. Sometimes you just snap. Sometimes you get emotional, whatever it might be. Sometimes you do the thing that you should not do. That is something that we all do. So then make it right and move on. So approach the person first. This applies to our Discord. So as we talk about this now, these are rules now. And I will update the rules on Discord to reflect Matthew 18, 15 through 20. They'll be a part of the rules. This is how we're going to deal with within our little community, our little church, This is how we're going to deal with conflict. Because most of us are Christian. That's what makes sense. It's also just good advice. Take God out of it. It's good advice. Where this gets tricky is that not everybody in our Discord is Christian. In that case, don't approach people as if they have to uphold Christian morals. That's something that you just, it's a life skill. Just like you wouldn't go out on the street to random secular people and be like, oh my God, you sinned. I saw you do that. How could you live with yourself? What, they don't care. They don't believe that. So it doesn't work with them. However, most of us are Christian. So most of us should be holding each other accountable. Most of us should be doing that. So that's how we're going to approach conflict moving forward. First, do not publicly blast somebody. If you feel like they are sinning, or if you feel like they are being rude, or whatever it is, if they're breaking a community rule, which you can now see on Discord, if you go to the bottom of like the welcome section. Wait, where'd it go? Oh no. Sarah, do you have any idea why that happened? Or no, I'm stupid. It's all good. I'm just dumb. We're good, friends. All right, so report is right here in Discord now. If you click report, then what it's going to do is it's going to open a whole page with all of the community rules. All of the rules. These are rules that you agreed to when you joined the server. So it's nothing new. These are rules that are going to get updated periodically, but they're pretty standard rules. So if you feel like somebody has broken our community rules, which most of them are Christian values, at least to some degree, they're Christian values, report it. It's a ticket system. The tickets come directly to me and only to me for now. That's the other thing that we're going to get to in a little bit. I need some help. But for now, they're going to all come to me. Once they come to me, I will talk to the person directly, privately. Also, you feel free to reach out to the person privately. Send them a direct message and talk to them about what you feel happened. Just like scripture says, if that doesn't work, grab another 1 or 2 members. If you did it yourself, grab me, grab somebody else, preferably again, somebody that the individual, the user trusts or respects, so that we can approach them with love. And we'll do that as 2 or 3 people within a small group. Beyond that, I think I'm still trying to figure out exactly how it's going to look, but it's going to go to a group discussion. If the person just can't get along here within our community and it has any possibility of poisoning our culture, which has been really, really good, we've had great culture here, then we will hold a town hall. And in that town hall, everybody will have basically a chance to speak on the individual in question and decide as a group if the individual belongs in our group or not. I don't see how else to do it. So if anybody has any suggestions, feel free to send them to me. But that's where we sit right now, because I'm not willing to let culture go to shit. I'm also not willing to let people disrespect each other. It's really that simple. Neither are going to stand with me. I'm not into it. It's not going to happen. So that's the plan as of right now. All right, I'm going to jump in the chat. I've seen you guys throw some stuff out here that I haven't read yet. So give me 2 seconds. If they refuse to listen, even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. I sometimes struggle with the idea that I should not sin, but I was born with sinful nature. It feels like deck was stacked against me. Okay, both personally and as a community, going to the church, question, how is it not misconstrued as gossip? Well, gossip is kind of within a different context, right? Gossip is more of like, you're trying to stoke the fire. Going to the church is like, hey, I love this person. They're falling away. I need you guys' help to help me get them back on track. It's, in my opinion, it's very different. Gossip is a very different thing. Gossip also has a poor intention. The intentions of gossipers are to make things worse, not to make them better. Our intentions here should be to make things better. Says sins against you. So how do you define that? Is that an action against your person, or is it you as a generalization of you. So within our context here, the sins against you is sins against our community, period. So if somebody is sinning against what we have here, the safeness, the culture, the environment, the atmosphere, what we have, some of us have worked hard to build. And I'm not really talking about myself, but like Sarah's worked real hard to build the Discord. I've obviously put time in too. And all the rest of you, like you dedicate time to the Discord. You guys are building the Discord. I am not. You guys are. So you should want to preserve the culture. So if somebody sins against the group, which again, our rules are basically biblical rules. So if they're sinning against biblical stuff, it's twofold. That's where I see it within our context, Sarah. Is sinning against you is it could be sinning against someone personally, but it could also just be against the group in general, which is tied to biblical morality. So sinning against biblical morality. I hope that makes sense. The deck is stacked against the chick when it is forced to break out of the egg, or the plant to break through the soil. We fight sin in a similar fashion. It's poetic, man. Ghost, you're poetic, man. It's good advice regardless. Yes. Matthew 18 is good advice regardless. The only person I ever saw who actually got out of the egg was born. Good God, dude. Even non-Christians have a simple acronym, DBAA and PMA. Sarah will be the executioner. Yes. 1 Corinthians 6, 1 through 11 also touches on a grievance against another. Yes. So that was my reference too, that 1 Corinthians also gives us a very clear directive on when somebody should be booted from the church. It's sad. It sucks. It's not what anybody wants, man. But Paul talks about the fact that when you allow somebody to come in and poison the church body, you're doing more damage than good. Because on one hand, you're like, oh, well, we want anybody to be welcome. We want anybody to be in the church. Sure. But if the result of that is you poison 20 good people who are doing good work in building community, you did the wrong thing. Good intentions do not always yield good results. Sometimes good intentions result in shit. And that is what we're trying to avoid. So if somebody is, it's really just that simple. It's really that simple. I won't rant on it. That's it. We're not going to keep somebody who's poison. And this isn't directed at anybody right now. This is general stuff that we're talking about now. This is no longer in any way about this very slight drama that we had on Discord. This is just in general. If somebody comes into our Discord and creates drama, they're poison. So we will address it in the Matthew 18 way. We will address it on a personal, respectful, and loving manner, individually. We will address it with several people, still out of love. And then after that, we will hold a town hall. And we will do, whether the person in question is present or not, we will decide as a group whether the person is good for the group or whether they are going to cause damage to the group. That's the plan. Cult rules. If someone wants me to mediate or be that other person, okay, other than that, I defer to Joe. Sarah, you know I wildly value your opinion. So as much of that as you would like to or are willing to be involved, you know I love to have you involved. But again, guys, I want to be clear. This is a community thing. I'm not deciding anything. Y'all should know that by now. This is going to be a group decision. If anybody ever has to be kicked out of the Discord, which hasn't happened yet, but we've been close with one person, it's a community decision. We will all together decide whether the person stays or whether the person goes. Because this is not my Discord. This is our Discord. This is our group. It is not mine. I wonder if I can excommunicate myself from myself. Sometimes I get tired of my shit. I identify with that very heavily. Love each other is so cliche, but it's also literally the only way to thrive on this planet. Yeah, just love each other. And if you can't, don't communicate with that person. That is a flat rule. If you can't there are people I just don't get along with. Guess what I don't do? I don't talk to those people because I have a hard time being nice to them because they annoy the hell out of me. And that's not necessarily their fault. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe there's an issue with me. Either way, it's not productive for me to engage with them. So I don't engage with them. It's really that simple. I mean, crap. Oops. I agree, Joe. I'll be good. Yeah, Floof, you are the most significant problem on the Discord. You're so bad. You're so bad. You're such a problem. You're such a problem producer, Miss Floof. Poopy, crap is too harsh, bro. Yeah, crap is, it's a bit far, my friend. We should do the poopy. In chapter 5, he rebuked the church of Corinth. Yes. And if there was ever a church that would make Paul talk about excommunicating people, it was the church at Corinth, for sure. Anybody who was with us when we went through 1 Corinthians in the Bible study knows that. If you have not watched those, I'd highly recommend to go back. We did a deep dive into 1 Corinthians. It was really, really good. It was really good. Those are some of my favorite texts. Good thing is, like Joe says, everyone here knows our community is synonymous with respect, cordiality, caring, hospitality, and fellowship. Yes, and it needs to stay that way. So anybody who threatens that will be addressed moving forward. They didn't name the platform Discord. That's true. That's a good point. That's funny. I never thought about that. Is this about me? Is this why I was put up for execution? Jesus Christ. No, Scott, you're lovely, my friend. You are lovely. Good intentions that aren't undergirded with wisdom can lead to bad situations. Yeah. Can hurt people or traumatize people, bleed over the community, and be a poisoner to the church. Yes. Which is sad, but yes. There are people who have issues with trauma, who maybe it's not their fault necessarily, but they can still be poison to other people. There are plenty of people who suffer from traumatic pasts who don't do the work to make it through the trauma, and they end up hurting anyone who's in their life. It's a shitty situation because we want to be sympathetic to the person who has the issues with trauma, but at the same time, if that person dramatically negatively impacts the lives of others, it doesn't justify it. It's a crappy situation. But yes, people who suffer from trauma can poison people who don't. So it's a tightrope walk of trying to help people who have serious trauma. It's a tightrope walk. What we witnessed was an odd eventuality. I feel confident won't happen again. So it's actually the second time something like that has happened. But the first time we were able to solve it relatively easily. The reality is it's going to happen again. It absolutely is. To some degree, it's going to happen again, Mikkel. What that looks like, how severe it is, those things are, anybody's guess. But two users having an issue with each other is going to happen again. Why? Because we're people. That's how people work. But we need to really push the culture, which is not everybody here is Christian. Not everybody here has to adhere to Christian values. And everybody here needs to be okay with that. I'm not creating a Christians only fan club. That's not what we are. We are people who want to know stuff. There are days where we're going to talk about Buddhism. It doesn't mean we believe it. It means we're interested. I don't know how you can say Christianity is the truth if you've never read anything from another religion. To me, that's indoctrination. You've been indoctrinated. You don't really know. You've been indoctrinated. Even people have committed their entire lives to studying all religions, and maybe they land on Christianity. I guarantee they struggled through some of the other religious stuff. It's anybody who's not indoctrinated, at least. But you have to be open to other people's opinions, even if you disagree with it. You're allowed to disagree with it. You're not allowed to disrespect them. That's assuming if there's malicious intention, but I'm talking simplified, just hurting people. Even without malicious intention, though, somebody who suffers from trauma, I've experienced it, can still dramatically negatively impact the lives of others. So there has to be a line somewhere where we obviously want to be there and help the person who has traumatic issues, for sure. But if the person with traumatic issues begins negatively impacting others to the point that they experience trauma, it's not the right move keeping that individual in a group, whether it's this group or any group. Those people become more negative than positive, and then you have 5 people with trauma instead of 1. You want to do anything you can to help someone who's hurting, for sure. But if the person who's hurting comes in and shoots 5 other people in the neck, it probably wasn't the right move. And those are hard decisions that you have to make if you're in a situation like that. And it's not always malicious intent. Sometimes people with trauma really need to work on their stuff before they get in an intimate setting with other people so that they don't hurt other people. No, Scott, you were a rehearsal. Scott, we're going to make clothing based on you with your name. You are an idol. A generational curse for sin is a scary concept. So the church isn't a hospital for the broken. It's a museum for the saints. I didn't mean Jesus. I mean, didn't Jesus seek out the lost, broken, and hurting? And if we are like him, we shouldn't. Sure, but he also told them to stop. Jesus didn't welcome the broken and hurting and say, do whatever the hell you want. Let your BS bleed all over the rest of the healthy people. There were scenarios where Jesus said, okay, I identify that you have issues. I need you to fix the issues. He didn't say, I identify you have issues. Keep on living that way. It wasn't it. The church is a hospital. But again, if you bring in somebody who has trauma to help them, and then they give 30 other people trauma, is that the right move? Or is it a net negative? It's not an easy answer. You want to help them, but the minute they start impacting others in a negative manner, something needs to be done. I'm not saying we just kick them out. I'm saying same thing. We address it. We talk to them like, hey, you seem to be hurting, but you're also lashing out at 30 different people. We need you to stop lashing out at 30 people. Is there something we can do for you? Is there something that we can provide you? Can we have a call with you? How can we serve you? And then if that doesn't work, then something needs to be done. But broken people have the potential to hurt other people who did nothing wrong. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's something we run a poll on, but that's my opinion. If somebody comes in and they start hurting a whole number of people, just because they're hurt doesn't justify them hurting other people. That's super hypocritical. Just because I went through trauma when I was younger doesn't mean I can go put other people through trauma and be like, oh, well, I experienced tough stuff, so now you all have to experience tough stuff because I have no real drive to fix my shit. And instead, I'm going to attack other people out of my trauma. Talk to them with love, 100%. I'm telling May, I think you may have me messed up. We will go to absolute lengths to help somebody and keep them with us if they join the group who has trauma. I feel like we have, actually. There have been several people. I'm saying if they literally really start damaging the community, then something might need to be done. But even then, it'll be a group decision. It will not be me just being hierarchy with my staff. It'll be you guys will decide. But yeah, it all needs to be done with love. It all needs to be done with love. The culture is truth seeking. If that's not what you're here for, if you're here for cookie cutter Christianity, I'd prefer you left. Honestly, you're welcome to stay, but don't be surprised if I annoy the hell out of you, because that's not me. But if we talk about things that don't interest you, because that's not what we do here. It's general truth seeking, primarily from a Christian context, but general truth seeking, and going way deeper than what the modern Christian church is going to cover, because that's the whole point, right? Most of us have at some point either been rejected or kicked out of the church, and most of us have been dissatisfied with what we've been taught in church, right? If I'm out of line, you guys can tell me, but that's the way I see it. That's my intention with this. So that's kind of where I sit. That's where I sit. A kind word turneth away wrath. So straighten up, bozo. Agreed. No, just thinking of when I went through a very traumatic life event in the church, didn't talk to me, they talked at me and just kicked me out. So that's where the question was sourced. No, Maze, and I know your story, and no, we would never deal with you that way. I assume you know that based on just you and I's personal conversations. No. We would do anything we could to help you through the trauma. But Maze, if you came into our church with the trauma and then started treating everybody in the church like shit and justifying it and saying, oh, well, I was treated really poorly by the church, then you're a hypocrite. So you were treated poorly by the church. So now you're going to come in and treat a totally innocent church who would be there for you, who would support you, like shit? No, that's what I'm talking about. You obviously you came in Maze a long time ago, and as far as I know, everybody's been pretty accepting of you, right? Like this is a place for people who have been kicked out of church. This is a place for people who don't feel like they fit in church. This is a place for people with church trauma. I know Mystic would say, she's not here anymore. I know she had an event tonight, so she was only here in the beginning. Mystic had a bunch of church drama. She doesn't so much feel that here, at least not directly from individual people, right? Oh, Joe, you're so annoying. I know this. That's why I love that you guys deal with it. I appreciate it. That was a bad church, Maze. Sorry to hear that. Yes, Maze's story is actually wild. It's super, super wild. And wondering, am I just the problem? Like the song, Hello, It's Me. The problem, it's me. No, Maze. This is the place for you. But if somebody starts coming in and beating everybody else up, you bleeding on the church is not a problem. You coming in with a gun and shooting everybody in the church, that's a problem. There's a big difference there. You come bleeding into the church, everybody here, as far as I would say, is going to come rushing to help you. But if you come in bleeding, dual wielding pistols, and then start firing, that is a very different situation. I hope that makes sense, because that's the absolute truth of what I mean. Did anyone else's stream stop? I'm good, Sarah. I'm good too. Yeah, you must have had a glitch in the matrix there, Wi-Fi. Yeah, this place has accepted me as an outcast or spiritual nomad. Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. But I want it to be that way for Christians. I want it to be that way for Muslims. I want it to be that way for Buddhists. I want it to be that way for anybody. I want this to just be somewhere where people can seek spirituality. I do not care what God they worship. Even though I have a Christian bend, and I may be kind of inadvertently, subliminally hoping they begin to see things the way that most of us see them, because we believe that's the truth, I will never be someone who shoves my truth down their throat. Because am I absolutely sure that I'm right? Hell no. Hell no. I think within myself and my heart that I'm right, but I would never shove that down other people's throats. Because if any of you started doing that to me, I'd be extremely annoyed. I'll seek truth on my own. I will seek truth as a church body with you guys, but I'll never tell you what to believe, and I sure as hell hope you never tell me what to believe. That is not why we're here. We can debate it. We can talk about it. We can oppose each other, but nobody here is dictating what anybody else believes. That's kind of where I draw a very harsh line in the sand. At a big church I went to, the pastor had a whole security team with earbuds and stuff. Righteous. Sounds like Joel Osteen. Sarah, have a lovely evening. Thanks again for your help. All right, guys, before we wrap up, because it is about time, I am going to be... Actually, let me think about how I want to do this. Basically, if anybody is interested in being a moderator, this would give you... Basically, what your job would be to moderate different channels. So if somebody posts, say, something that should be in theology in the off-topic section, or somebody posts something that's news and culture in the Bible section, your responsibility would be to let the person know, like, hey, this is a better place for that. Can you repost it over in that section? So proper placement of different conversations. Also, if somebody posts something inappropriate, say it's a link to a website that's inappropriate, say somebody says something outwardly rude, people, again, they're allowed to argue, they're allowed to disagree, but people are not allowed to treat each other like shit. That's a line in the sand. So if you see people treating each other like crap, it would be your job then to delete the message. Keeping in mind, our Discord has a log, so I and others are able to see everything that's deleted, everything that's posted, so don't abuse the power. But if anybody's interested in helping me moderate, because obviously I don't have that much time. I work a lot. I need a couple people who are active to help just moderate conversation. Like Mikkel said, we don't really have issues in our Discord, so it's not like a real job. But every once in a while, something happens that I need some help on just making sure that stuff stays in line. So if anybody is interested in doing that, you can let me know on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook in a private message, or you can let me know here in YouTube. Whatever you want to do. You can also, in the off-topic chat, just at Tattoo Theist, tag me and say interested in mod. And then after everybody's kind of who wants anything to do with it lets me know, I'll talk to each of you and we'll decide, what's best. I probably only need one right now. It's not like we have that much going on, but that's the plan. So anybody who has any interest, you can let me know. How you choose to let me know is totally up to you. I look like a punk rocker with long hair, and I had gotten a lot of shit from church. I just know God was telling me that this church isn't for me. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I took a bunch of crap as a pastor because of all my tattoos and my history. For anybody who found out about it, I'm glad you didn't force yourself to stay there. Yeah, for sure. Joe, please, I see it appropriate. Share like a summary on your theist stance for anyone who's not clear yet. Okay. Mod sounds like a fun job. Maze, I think you would have to be more active. I don't see you much. So I could be wrong, and you tell me if I'm wrong. But I feel like I don't see you a whole lot. Yeah, so if you're active enough, you just said it yourself. If you're active enough, Maze, I would love to have you. I love having you around. You always add value. So that'd be great. The other thing too is whoever does decide to, talk to me about being a mod, you would also be a YouTube mod. So you'd also have to moderate the YouTube chat. So you do have to be active. Like you have to be here most streams, just because it's easier that way. Mikkel, I'll give the Theist Thesis in 1 second. I don't think I have a hall monitor in my DNA. I'll only do it if nobody else volunteers. Ghost, that's BS. Maze, think about it. Think about it. And if you can be active enough, I'm in. I'd love to have you. And then if anybody else wants in, I definitely got you. Ghost, obviously, you'd be lovely if you're down. Mikkel, you would obviously also be lovely if you're down. Mikkel, you already have the philosopher role, but I'd love to have you there too. So between Maze, Ghost, and Mikkel, I'll be down for all of you. I'll be down for one of you. You guys kind of think about it and let me know. Dr. John, it's been a while, man. It's good to see you. Glad you dropped in. Late to the party, but glad you dropped in. All right, anyways, think about it. We're going to wrap up. There was one more thing. Oh, Mikkel. Okay, so Mikkel asked me, he said, Joe, please, I see it as appropriate. Share like a summary on your theist stance for anyone who's not clear yet. The shortest way possible for me to explain why my username and stuff is Tattoo Theist and why we named the podcast Theist Thesis. Theist in general is just somebody who believes in God. It's a very generalized kind of title. Okay, so that wasn't always my username, even when things were really big years ago. I changed it to that because the deeper I got into Christianity, the more I realized the less that I know. The more educated I got, the more of seminary I went through, the more of getting ordained and working within the church and talking to people who are deeply theological and who hold PhDs in theology. The deeper I got into it, the more I realized a lot of this doesn't make sense. The more I realized most of this is impossible for humans to understand. The more I realized there's issues with the Bible. There's issues with the Christian faith. There's a lot of issues with things that I thought were pretty cut and dry. It took a long time for me to reconcile that and to become okay with that and to not be bothered by that. I had an issue. I had a pretty decent issue for a long time. And then I ended up landing in a place, and we can talk about this at length another day because I got to go. But I got to a place where I was like, okay, I believe in God. Absolutely. I have absolutely no doubt that God exists. However, I don't fully align with Christianity. And there's a million different reasons for that. But if I had to choose a faith that is organized, Christianity makes the most sense. Both philosophically, theologically, historically, and from kind of an evidence basis. Because I'm not a real floofy spiritual person. I'm more like analytical and an academic, I guess. Like I like to see, I like to understand, I like to have tangible things, proof, coherent corroboration. That's the way I work. Christianity fits the mold the best. Christianity's got problems, but it fits the mold the best. So I landed in a place where like I can call myself a Christian, but it's going to confuse people when I start talking. So instead, I decided to just call myself a theist. I'm very open to being wrong about a lot of what I believe. I'm very open to being right about things that I believe. I just lack the arrogance to pretend that I know, I guess, is really how I got there. That's really it. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I lived in delusion for a long time as a heavy, hardcore Christian, and I just can't live there anymore. That's the honest answer. So in short, that's the answer. Yeah, think about it, Ghostgate. We love you. Thanks for jumping in tonight. Just continue to meow at them until they leave you alone. When trolls yell at me, I say, you realize you are arguing with the cat, right? It's a fair point. Fair point, dumb cat. A theist with a Socratic mind, or a Socratic creed. Yeah, I mean, Mikkel, someday we can really get into that. Someday I'll let you guys just like Q&A me. Because as Mystic said to me in a DM, she has no idea what I believe. And I'm sure most of you don't, because I don't really talk about it. So at some point, someday, we'll hold a full Q&A. And the whole thing will just be, y'all can ask me whatever, and I'll answer it honestly. It'd be fun. So we'll do that at some point. Okay, real quickly, guys, if you do not know, there's a prayer section in the Discord. I think all you guys know, so I'm not going to patronize you. One thing I did want to pray for tonight is Shannon. Shannon is one of our members who's been with us for since the very beginning. And she's going through a lot of BS with work. So she's in the military, so is her husband. And they've just been kind of getting effed around by the military for like quite some time. I mean, for a very long time. But as harshly as they're being effed around over the past couple months has just been constant. It's been one thing after another, after another, after another, to the point that Shannon is like having health problems because she's so stressed out. So everybody, please think about Shannon, pray for Shannon, reach out to her, just tell her you're thinking about her. But pray for her. She's going through a lot. Same with her husband and with her kid, Ezra. They got a lot going on. Floofer, we love you. It was great to see you. You are not the problem, Floofer. You are so not a problem. But everybody pray for Shannon, pray for Ezra and Jeremiah, that they just kind of get through what they're going through and find a little bit of comfort, and obviously the health stuff, to not be sick. Whatever she's going through seems pretty rough. So everybody just think about her. Also, guys, pray for the Discord. Don't pray for the Discord. Pray for our group of people, because we have awesome people. There's going to be spits and spats and little issues here and there. Everybody needs to come together and have each other's backs. And if you see something, I can't believe I'm about to say this. If you see something, say something. If you see something, don't blow up on somebody. Don't take it into your own hands necessarily. Use the report function if it's significant. Otherwise, reach out to the person individually. All of us are adults. Most of us are adults. Reach out to the person. Talk to them. See what's going on. See if there's something you can do for them. See if there's something we as a group can do for them. And if the issues persist, report them. Then I'll get involved directly. And then, we'll deal with this stuff as a group. But this is not a dictatorship. I'm not ever going to kick somebody out unless it's like, hell no, not a chance that person's going to be here. It has to be dramatic. Otherwise, little behavioral things and issues, it will be a group decision whether those people stay in our group or not. Because this is not my group. This is our group. You all put just as much, if not more, work into it than I do. You guys create the culture way more than I do. So you guys are going to be what decides who is a good fit for the culture and who is not a good fit for the culture. So just understand that. I love you guys. Everybody have a great night. I will see you on Sunday for, I think, part 10 of Enoch. It's going to be super exciting. It's going to be a great weekend. Great weekend. Dr. John, it was lovely to see you. Mikkel, I love you, man. Thank you for thank you for everything this evening, and hope